14 ingredients, 150 hours, and an absurd amount of chocolate. Today I'll be making Alvin Zhou's extravagant chocolate cake and simultaneously testing my baking skills and patience. This is my overly scientific baking video.
Oh, okay.
Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is a bit of a different video, a celebration of sorts, whereby I'll be making a deliciously complicated chocolate cake to celebrate a year of making videos on this channel. This is the second installation of the Science Behind series, and this would not have been possible without another YouTuber, David Seymour, who painstakingly wrote this recipe and the quantities for it for people as mad as me, who probably have too much time on their hands. Anyway, without further stalling, let's get started because this cake is already going to take me long enough. Right, so we're going to be starting off easy by making brown butter and infusing coffee beans with cream. So, starting with the brown butter, where we start by melting 340 or 12 ounces for my imperial users of unsalted butter in a pan and heating this until the yellow colour turns into a more amber brown colour. You'll see it in the video. Brown butter is so delicious. The depth of flavour developed in this process is perfect for really any recipe. And this is caused by the Maillard reaction, which is named after the French chemist Louis-Camille Maillard. Once again, sorry for the poor French pronunciation. I have to say this every video because so many scientists are French. Anyway, he interestingly died whilst judging a science competition, which is a bit random, but aside from his personal details, the namesake reaction occurs between amino acids, the most basic component of proteins, and reducing sugars that react at a specific temperature, pH, and moisture level over time to form bonds. Browning and, great flavour as well. And these proteins and reducing sugars are from the milk solids found in the butter, which you can see caramelised in the video. Now, there are different Maillard bonding groups depending on the food being cooked, and the chemistry of the process was not entirely understood by Maillard. He was just the one who hypothesised the reaction. It was not until quite a bit later that the mechanisms of the reaction were detailed by the American chemist John E. Hodge. Anyway, back to the pan. I'm now going to be adding ice cubes to stop the cooking process and to rehydrate the brown butter, which has lost quite a bit of water during the Maillard process. Now I'm pouring this brown butter into a measuring jug and filling this up to 2 cups, about 475 millilitres, to that line with whiskey because I could not find honey bourbon for love nor money. I don't know where Alvin got his honey bourbon from, but I could not find it anywhere. So, anyway, having done some research, I was reassured that the whiskey would work just as well, so I used it. So the whiskey, it will now infuse with the brown butter to enhance the flavour and make the chocolatey flavour profile more vibrant. And the reason this infusion works is due to varying polarity of the components. Alcohol is an excellent solvent, and this is because bonds can be made with polar and non-polar molecules, and since brown butter is non-polar, being a lipid, the flavours from each component can be extracted to form an even richer flavoured product. So, the alcohol also decreases the overall distance between the molecules of the components, and this allows the flavours to be shared between them, which has the same effect, really. I've made this process sound far simpler than it is, but truthfully, I could spend a much longer portion of this video discussing the process. But frankly, I just want my cake, and it is taking long enough, so yeah. My whiskey today was, I believe, about 40%. And if it was of a higher proof, the flavour would probably be even better, but this was literally all I could find today. So next, I'll infuse about 800 grams of the coffee beans with around a litre of double or heavy cream, depending on where you live. And I will infuse this in a bowl and leave it in the fridge for a few days until I make the mousse. In the fridge, an extraction process will occur through a variety of transport processes and the components entering the solution together through various compounds. The coffee and chocolate flavours are so good together because they are similar in terms of their aromatic properties, and this stimulates the same senses in the brain and also on the taste buds. So I will leave them to rest in the fridge and I will see you in a few days. Okay, a few days later, and here we are. We are now left with this beautiful disc, the product of a lot of chemical reactions, esterification, whereby ester bonds are formed between alcohols, our bourbon, and carboxylic acid as a result of condensation reactions that occurred in my fridge, and even more patience, and this should be filled with flavour, but we are not using this just yet. We're going to be first filtering the remaining liquid in the jug using a very sciencey piece of filter paper. In other words, baking paper, which will leave us with a thick paste, like precipitate product, that will be added to the pan with the solid disc. So I will also add a tablespoon of espresso powder, which will fully establish the coffee flavour in this batter. Good old biochemistry. For the time being, we're done with these wet ingredients, so let's just put them aside and get started with another mixture of wet ingredients. So here we go, my first of 6 eggs out of a total of 15. Crazy. And to this, I will add a tablespoon and a half of vanilla paste and 1.5 cups of brown sugar. These will be beaten until smooth, which aerates and adds volume to the mixture. This works by denaturing the proteins in the 6 eggs, which makes for a lighter texture when baked, but we're still very far from this, which is a bit of a shame. The other wet ingredients can return now, and this will be added to this mixture too. And hello dry ingredients. In goes 1 3/4 cups of plain / all-purpose flour, 1 1/4 cups of Dutch processed cocoa powder, which is different from regular cocoa powder because it has been treated with an alkaline solution. That just makes the taste less bitter. 1.5 teaspoons of kosher salt, different from regular salt as the grains are larger and without additives, namely iodine, even though both table salt and kosher salt are both sodium chloride. 1 3/4 teaspoons of baking or bicarbonate soda, which reacts with acids in the mixture to create carbon dioxide, which makes the mixture bubbly and more airy and light, which is vital to the texture, and I will come back to these bubbles later. And once these are thoroughly mixed with beaters, 1 3/4 cups of cold brew that I just bought from Starbucks for a total of £4.80, and some of the filtered brown butter will be added to the mixture. Finally, 6 ounces of chopped dark chocolate will be gently added to the batter, and oh my god, we are done with stage 1. It looks really good so far, so I'm hoping my luck will continue. So I greased the 2 rectangular baking trays and added the batter to these, evening them out on the top, not very well, and then I returned these to the fridge to allow the flour to hydrate, giving the cake a nice texture once again. The bubbles will also settle, so the cake will be helplessly fluffy. A few days have passed now, and finally these cakes are going to go in the oven. During their time baking away, I will explain a little bit about the baking process. There are a lot of reactions that happen, so I cannot talk about all of them, but I will mention the main ones. First is the decomposition of starch into sugar through dextrinization, whereby dry heat causes this change and the change in texture. This, along with caramelization, causes browning on the top of the cake. Now moving to the baking / bicarbonate of soda. During heating, this will experience thermal decomposition, which gives off the carbon dioxide bubbles that I mentioned earlier, and this makes this a leavening agent, this causes rising in the cake, but in this cake it will not rise very much, so just be aware of that. Back to another thing that I mentioned earlier, eggs. The proteins in which are denatured, they will act as a binding agent, making the cake more solid, coagulated if you will. Aside from the ingredients in the cake, the heat of the oven is also incredibly important, as this will remove much of the moisture from the cake through processes like evaporation. Whilst I wait, I will strain the coffee beans from the double cream, and I will divide this mixture into 2 400ml mixtures. I then remove the cakes from the oven after about 20 minutes being heated at about 180 degrees Celsius or 360 Fahrenheit, and I will now turn to the stove where the first 400ml of coffee cream will be added, along with 9 egg yolks, 30 grams of brown sugar, and 6 grams of vanilla paste, and I will whisk this once again, denaturing the proteins in the eggs and also thickening the mixture. And the cream will be whipped as well, making it thicker and trapping air bubbles to give the mousse its airy texture. Then I'll add 400 grams of dark chocolate, which is frankly for taste, or this would just be a custard, which is no bad thing, it's just not what I'm looking for today. The remaining cream, by the way, will be mixed with 90 grams of powdered sugar, once again to make an airy mix, and these two mixtures will be folded into each other to give this delicious masterpiece. The heavy cream in the second video was whipped, by the way, which is why the mixtures were folded and not just straight up mixed, to keep the fluffy consistency. So just before the construction of the cake, no, we're not there yet. I'm going to make a hot chocolate, not to drink, but to soak the cake in. And for this, I used 10 ounces of full-fat milk, a blue lid for the British viewers, 2 ounces of dark chocolate, and a tablespoon of brown sugar. This is yet another example of solubility in practice, which we've seen quite a bit of today. So my toiling will continue for a little bit longer as I layer the cake. So I put a piece of cake down, followed by some hot chocolate cake soak, mousse, and then I repeat it. I'm almost there now, and yes, this is going to look aesthetic. I have no doubts, yeah. Self-confidence and all that, yeah, no doubts. It actually looks rather decent, so I was quite shocked by that, but yeah. This will now rest in the fridge for some more time, just to maintain the structure, so it does not fall apart, right in front of my eyes. I may cry if that happens. Anyway, so that's the plan. So the next day, and I'm now adding mousse to the sides. Yay. I'll also make a ganache with equal parts double cream and chocolate. I use 9 ounces of each. And I will now drench the cake in ganache. Et voila! The cake is certainly lumpy and a little lopsided, but I no longer care. I'm going to add a few decorational chocolate chips to the side, and phew, I am done. So I'm no food critic, but I made this to celebrate a pretty big milestone for this channel. I've been making videos, admittedly inconsistently, for a whole year now, which is crazy to say. That first video about Edmund Halley is still one of my favourites, but I have so many plans for next year that I can't wait to share with you. I'm moving towards more in-person content like this video, just because I think there is so much more I can do with that, and I genuinely hope that you will follow me in that journey, and that you enjoy my future content. Anyway, no more yapping, bon appetit! Alright, this is probably the most complicated piece of cake I've ever made in my life, so this better be bloody delicious. Okay. Okay, that is pretty good. Okay, that is nice. Try a bit of the ganache. Oops. What the hell? That's a massive piece of cake. I think if you didn't like coffee, you would hate this cake. But I don't mind it, so it's pretty good. Would I go to this effort again? No, probably not, quite honestly. It was a lot of work, so no, but it was so very pricey to make. So from that perspective as well, no, I probably wouldn't make it again. But there we go. Maybe if I come into money and I'm very bored again, maybe then, but until then, probably not. So yeah, so that's enough for me. From me. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye-bye.